from I4CP, the Institute for Corporate Productivity. Great to see so many returning names and faces to our weekly event here. I've got a great co-host that I'll be introducing in a moment and a great guest. But as always, first, a few preliminaries. If you're new to this weekly call series, we are I4CP, the Institute for Corporate Productivity. We're a human capital research and community. We discover the people practices that drive high performance in organizations. We do that through our research primarily, and we look at what high-performing organizations do different than low performers. We look at revenue growth, market share, profitability, and customer satisfaction to tease out who those high-performing companies are. And then in our studies, in any area of human resources, we look at which specific practices, which behaviors those high-performing companies, that top quartile, do far more often than the bottom quartile, the lower performers. We share that data out with the broader HR public and the full reports, of course, for our member companies. We are a member-based community. You see here just a small sampling of the member organizations that make up I4CP, ranging from very large companies like Amazon, Ford, Microsoft, Accenture, and others, as well as some smaller companies. We've got a growing cohort of startups and unicorn companies. You also see that the organizations here range quite a bit across industries, from financial, high-tech, healthcare, government, and nonprofits, really spanning across the board. If you're interested in membership and not sure if your company is a member yet, or know that you aren't but are interested, by all means, visit out at our website at i4cp.com. Be happy to tell you more about what membership entails. And if you're with a member organization, special welcome to you to the call this week. Always great to have our members joining these public Thursday calls. My name's Tom Stone. I'm a senior research analyst here at I4CP. And this week, I'm joined by my colleague, another senior research analyst on the team, Carol Morrison. Good morning, Carol. Good to see you.
Hi, Tom. Great to be in the co-pilot seat today.
Yeah, great to have you with us. We'll introduce our special guest here in just a moment, but a few other preliminary items to go over. This is a weekly call, hence the name Next Practices Weekly. We meet every Thursday, barring vacations or other things that might come up. You see the lineup that we've got coming up. We've got guests coming from PNC Bank, Autodesk, and Teneo. You see the variety of topics we'll be covering, focusing on talent acquisition, hybrid and flexible work, and then broader strategic HR. We also, not listed here, but we've also been growing globally. We occasionally, maybe once a quarter, will have calls at different dates and times to gear things towards our friends in APAC or EMEA region, so different time zones. So be sure and share this call series, share our website with any colleagues you may have if you're at a global firm who maybe this time period, 11 a.m. Eastern on a Thursday might not be great for them. We do have the occasional call that's geared more for a global audience. Couple of other things to announce. Really excited. This is the first week, I think, that I've been able to announce this. We've been putting together our speaker list. Every year we have our Next Practices Now conference in person in Scottsdale, Arizona. Next year, it will be March 25th through the 28th. You see here the initial lineup of speakers. There'll be many more that we'll be announcing in the coming weeks and months. But you see here just a great lineup, diverse set of individuals. We've got authors and thought leaders from the industry. We've got a couple of CEOs I see. We've certainly got CHROs and other high-level leaders of HR. You see some great organizations here represented, from Microsoft to Citi to IBM, Best Buy, and others. Just a great lineup already being announced. So if you'd like to learn more about the conference, just go out to i4cp.conference/conference. We've already got loads of people signing up. In fact, we always get an initial group of signups at the previous year's conference. So even as early as March this year, we had people signing up for next year's conference, knowing that every year it's a great event, specifically geared, by the way, towards high HR leaders and without any vendors or consultants present. There's no expo, no trade show. It's just geared towards great content, great discussion for high-level HR leaders. All right, with that, I'm excited to introduce our special guest for today. This is someone that I've been looking forward to having on the call. It's someone that Carol knows well. She's a member of our Total Rewards leaderboard here at I4CP. and that is Kelley Elliott, Vice President of Total Rewards at Delta Airlines. Welcome, Kelley.
Good morning. Thanks, Tom. Excited to be here today.
Great to have you with us. A quick word for everyone on the call. If you can keep the chat open, it was great to see everyone introducing themselves, including some folks from outside the US and Canada. I think I saw Philippines represented, Ireland, and others. If you can keep the chat open, that is your means for interacting with our guest today. Feel free to ask questions, and Carol will be monitoring that chat and also chiming in with her own questions and comments as well. But let's get the conversation started with you, Kelley. First, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your career journey in HR.
Thanks. Well, good morning, everyone. As Tom mentioned, I joined the I4CP Total Rewards Board just really late last year. So I'm new to the organization, learning the organization, and excited to participate today. What we're going to talk about is something that we're really proud of. It's a topic that we are out there speaking a lot about, frankly, because it's one we think is for the greater good. So really, really open and want to share as much as we can and have you all learn from us. But in terms of my background in HR, sometimes I don't really think of myself as an HR leader. I came up through the consulting world. I spent about 15 years at WTW in the benefits consulting area. I am an actuary by background that I've now shared with my closest 150 friends here. I don't really share that all too often these days. But I spent about 15 years there, and UPS was actually my biggest client. And so I got to know their team really well. They hired me on to come join the team at UPS, and I was given an opportunity while I was there to lead Total Rewards. So that was a really big step in my career that I learned a ton from. I learned so much from my compensation leaders on the team then, and I really love the work that we do in this space. And just over 5 years ago, I joined Delta. My journey here at Delta has been tumultuous, as I'm sure you can all appreciate. And we'll talk a little bit about that and how that played into the decisions that we've made. But I think in terms of HR, we all are real HR professionals, no matter what our background is. I think very often different pathways lead us here. So I'm excited to share with you all today.
That's great, and it's nice that you had a couple before time years at Delta before the pandemic hit and things really ramped up. So many people that we've talked with on this call series, joined during the pandemic, and they didn't really know the organization they're with from a prior time. But you had a little bit of experience with both times. I'd like to learn a little bit more before we get to your main topic of the day. I'd like to learn a little bit more about just how HR is structured at Delta, Delta being an airline that we're all pretty familiar with. But if you could tell us just a little bit about the structure of HR.
Sure. So we like to say we have a pretty lean and mean team here at Delta. I'd say our HR team for a 90,000 plus employee organization, we have a very lean HR team. We've grown it quite a bit in the last couple of years, but the way that we are structured is pretty traditional, I would say. We have an HR service delivery function that supports all of us. We have COEs, which Total Rewards is one of them. And then we have our HRBP function. The thing that's a little unique, and this will come through in our discussion too, is that we have carved out our health-related functions and some of our wellness-related functions outside of HR. So we've hired in 2021, just coming out of COVID, we hired a chief health and wellness officer now, and he reports directly to our CEO. That's important because it shows the kind of the pedestal that we have put wellness on in our organization, and we closely partner with him because that health-related, both health and emotion, physical and emotional health, is his team's responsibility, and my team kind of manages all other aspects of wellness. So work really, really closely together. But that's a unique aspect of how we are structured that I think brings a different element to some of what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. That is interesting. I was just talking with one of our other members last week. They're like you in the transportation business, but in their case in railroads. And I believe they said that they had a position of chief medical officer, which unfortunately the acronym there, CMO, would get easily confused with chief marketing officer for a lot of firms. But so I like the fact that you've got, I think it was chief health and wellness. That's a more unique acronym, so would avoid confusion. But you're definitely a part of a growing trend there of organizations that are carving that out and elevating it to that top C-suite level. I'm interested how Delta has been doing over the past year. You've had to weather, I mean, we've all kept up with the headlines on how the airline industry has done since the start of the COVID pandemic. But then since then, you've had, the so-called Great Resignation that we all went through, maybe some fears of recession over the past year that really haven't yet at least come to fruition. There was inflation, which I know hits your industry a lot, particularly around fuel prices, but other pricings as well, including labor costs. So tell us a little bit about how you've weathered all these storms, particularly say those that have come in the past year.
Absolutely. For us, between the second half of 2021 through all of 2022 was a massive boom in hiring for us. And I think that happened everywhere, but in our industry in particular, we experienced that. The reason we experienced it is because we had to go down so much in 2020. So just a little bit of context of how we managed through COVID is important as we talk about what's happened in the last year. Essentially, we went from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. That's no surprise to anybody. The highest revenue days to essentially 5% of our revenue overnight. And so we were burning hundreds of millions of dollars a day. And so we needed to get hours out of the system as fast as possible. We did that in the combination of asking people to take voluntary leaves of absence from work unpaid and asking people to voluntarily leave. We did not lay off any employees, but we did have 25% of our workforce voluntarily leave. And so when we started to come back in 21 and 22, we didn't have the people we needed, right? So we had to just ramp up really, really quickly and hire like we've never hired as an organization. And since that time, we've hired net 41,000 people. So it's 50,000 people we've hired net. We still have 41,000 of them. And our total workforce is 90,000. So if that gives you a sense of like, our focus is around hiring, training, skilling, and getting people productive. And that's a challenge for us. I mean, to be perfectly honest, it's a challenge to get that many people ramped up to run the business as efficiently as we ran it before. And so what we're facing now is a slowdown in hiring because we have the people, and now it's all about how do we get people productive again, and how do we kind of face some of the cost pressures of a workforce that maybe isn't as productive as we all were before, because we just knew like there's no harm, nobody's doing anything wrong. It's years of experience that we're trying to ramp up really, really quickly. And so the fears of recession and the fears of first, the Great Resignation, less of an issue for us because everybody left during COVID.
Right.
And it's really been about, how do we create a value proposition that resonates with a whole new workforce of people, basically. And the fears of recession, we just haven't seen the slowdown in the service industry and there's this pent up travel demand that exists. We call it revenge travel. People are wanting to get out there. It's personal travel. It's less corporate travel and more personal. I want to get back out there and go. And so the business is not slowing. The demand's not slowing. It's how much capacity do we have to manage that in a way that our customers expect.
Yeah, definitely a lot of pent up vacation demand, PTO hours saved up. I think corporate, we've obviously seen some bounce back for that. I've been to several conferences that are back to their pre-pandemic sizes. But a lot of other business travel just isn't ever going to fully come back to the way it was, because people know that they can conduct some business at least over Zoom and Teams and those kinds of mediums. So yeah, very interesting. We had a recent guest here on the series from Delaware North, head of talent there, that similar thing in the hospitality industry, including serving some of your folks at airports and everything. Same thing, massive reduction in workforce, practically overnight, it felt like, I'm sure, and then had to ramp up quickly. I'm curious, one follow-up on the numbers you gave. I'm sure you must have had some boomerang employees from the ones that left voluntarily, but what percentage would you say were brand new? It sounded like they were mostly completely new hires, and hence the onboarding and productivity challenge.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really have too much of that boomerang effect, frankly, because well, I mean, we offered packages for people to leave, and if they come back, they have to forfeit if they still have any benefit of that, which some people do. So there's a real incentive for people not to come back. And so it's really a lot of new people getting ramped up pretty as quickly as possible. So we have a little bit of that, but not a ton.
Can I throw a question in here too? As Tom called out those amazing numbers that you told us about, I'm wondering when basically half of your workforce turns over, how does that affect your corporate culture? Because Delta's been around a long time, we're all familiar with it. How do you keep that going?
I think it's spot on, Carol, because we're actively in the middle of kind of managing through that change right now. Right. And I think we had a lot of people who were in the retirement lane, they left. And so it's a lot of newer, younger people with different wants and needs and different desires as it relates to their career and how much maybe time they're spending at work versus how much time they're spending outside of work. And I think we've all seen those priorities shift. Of the willingness to kind of give the discretionary effort is different. And so for us, we have had to kind of pause and say, how does that impact our culture overall? And how does that impact what we expect of people? It's the contract between employees and us as the employer. How have both sides of that changed? We're grappling with. We have what's called rules of the road. It's kind of our manifesto, for lack of a better word. And we actually just this last week released a refreshed version of that to address exactly what you asked about. We've had to reframe it a little bit to acknowledge that we are different, but there's a lot that's really special about Delta that is the same that we want to continue. So it's a great question and something we still haven't completely figured out, but are working really hard on. And I'm a little worried we might have lost Tom.
Yeah, I think that we have. I'm even more worried than you because tag I'm it. Thank you very much for that, Kelley. We had some interest in the chat also about that culture question and how you maintain that. Andrea says, is that a regret that the packages prevents boomerang or by design as you wanted a reboot of the employee base?
I think that's it's a very smart question that Andrea has asked. I think it probably depends on every single situation. I'd say, maybe we're 50-50. In some cases, we probably wanted a little bit of a reset. And in some cases, we've lost some experience we'd love to have back. My team was responsible for designing the packages in 2020 and rolling those out. And I often feel some guilt when people complain about learning and productivity. But I am reminded that in the face of what we were facing in 2020, we had no idea what tomorrow was going to bring. The company would not have been couldn't through that time. So it's there's pros and cons. There's definitely benefits and costs.
Thank you so much. I think while we're waiting to see if Tom's going to be able to get back, I know he's traveling this week and was probably experiencing a bit of spotty connectivity. So we will move ahead given that. And I know that the key focus of the conversation today, or at least one of them, is the focus that Delta has taken on financial well-being. And wonder if you could tell us some about what you're doing in this area, Kelley.
Absolutely. So, for us, rebuilding from our period of pandemic in 2020, out of that, it was really about us saying, how are we going to rebuild the organization? But then how are we also going to help people rebuild their own standing, whether it was financially or emotionally or physically, depending on how they maybe managed that period of time. And so from all the way at the top of the house, we put a big focus on just wellness and well-being in general, and acknowledge that every single person probably, is struggling with something different. We really believe that investing in Delta people enables the business, enables performance. And this concept of the virtuous circle for us is real. And to the extent that we, fuel individuals to be their best, we make investments based on what we believe will do that. And we have what's called the flight plan. Our flight plan is our business strategy, our business set of goals for the year. One of the items on our flight plan reads that we promote high performance powered by wellness, enabling people to be their best. So knowing that was kind of our main goal, our highest level goal, we set out to say, what about wellness will have the biggest impact? So essentially we asked people, we went through a process of 2 different surveys to say, how could we help people the most? One, we asked specifically about their financial wellness. And we said, in the area, what would help you rebuild? What do you struggle with the most? And what could we as an employer help you with the most? The things we heard about the most were, I don't have any emergency savings. I don't have any possibility of saving for something that comes up that's unexpected. So that was one thing. The other was saving for retirement and just general kind of a lack of clarity around what could have the biggest impact. So that was one set of input that we got from people. The other is we did what's called a Flourishing Index survey. I don't know if this is something that maybe you all have heard of or that you might use at your organizations, but essentially the Flourishing Index survey asks just general questions about how people are doing in the different domains of wellness. We've done it now twice. We did it in 2022. We did it in 2023. Coming out of that, we saw that the financial domain of wellness was where people were struggling the most. So last year, armed with all of this data, we said, what are we going to do about it? And we want to make a really big impact. We think people just frankly don't have the financial grounding, financial literacy that they need to really help themselves the most. And we know that something happening is a huge, huge stressor. So we took all of that input and we built and rolled out this new financial wellness program at the start of this year. So the way it works essentially is, first step is somebody says, yes, I want to open an emergency savings account. Okay, great. We offer them payroll deductions, meaning they can save $10, they can save $5, they can save $100 a pay period into their emergency savings account. That was one step we did. We really encouraged them to set it and forget it, meaning make a one-time election, set up the account, and forget about it until you need it. And then we said, now we really, we have some great resources, an education program, a coaching program for you to help figure out where you are on this journey of financial wellness and just make progress, whether it's focusing on your credit score or maybe building a foundation to buy a house or planning for retirement. We know people are on a very, very wide spectrum. So we worked with Fidelity and Operation Hope to build a in-person coaching model that helps people build goals and work towards those goals. I know in person doesn't seem scalable in all cases. I know that's not possible in all cases, but for us, we knew that was going to have the biggest impact. So we needed this to be something that people could do and have a relationship with these coaches. So we hinged it all on education and coaching. And we said, look, if you go through this program, we're going to seed that emergency savings account for you. We're going to put $1,000 into the account for you. You get $750 automatically. If you contribute $250, we'll contribute another $250. So at the end of this program, you will end up with the $1,000 from us, at least $250 from your own savings in an account that you can use should you have emergencies. And we did gross it up. So it was truly that full $1,000 that they would have in their account after they completed this program. This has been a lot of work for our team. We've put a significant amount of effort into launching it, educating, engaging around this. We've also made it really, really simple for people to do it. You only have to complete one coaching session, complete the education in one coaching session. We came out of the gate initially and said you had to do 3 sessions because we felt like that was going to have a bigger impact. But our leaders said, no, we want this and we want them to have this money sooner should they need it in case of emergency. So we put a lot of effort into just making sure we're sharing that, we are putting our money where our mouths are, and we're also, it's all rooted in financial education and financial literacy. Operation Hope and Fidelity do a really nice job of making this education and this content very, very simple for people and actionable for people, to make a difference in their lives. We have hundreds of testimonials coming out of this about how this has had an impact, a real impact on somebody's day-to-day. So we've said you have 2 years to get through the program. It's a one-time shot. It's not something we're going to do forever and always. I don't exactly know what it'll look like after we get through this initial round. But we are, really out there trying to get people to take action. Should you have to give somebody $1,000? No, I don't think so. But we wanted the incentive and also the outcome of this, improvement in their financial wellness. So Carol, if you want to go to the next page, I'll talk a little bit about what we saw, what's happened.
Yeah, Kelley, before I'm sorry, Tom, I was just going to say before we move over, Tom is back, obviously. And Zane asked about the financial tool that you referenced. You could maybe reiterate that.
Financial tool. I think maybe he's asking about the survey.
It might be. It's from early in what you were sharing, so not the names there towards the end.
Okay, an early survey we did on financial wellness, we just curated that ourselves. We just came up with kind of 10 questions and did a Qualtrics survey with our people. It was pretty simple and really rudimentary. We worked with our advisors to help us think about how we might frame that, but it was nothing special from a tool perspective. And really our education and our coaching model is not really a tool itself either. It's educational L&D type content that's been curated by Operation Hope and Fidelity. We host one site where all the programs are together. We actually have 3 pathways. So an individual can come in and say, I'm just working on the basics. An individual can come in and say, I'm trying to build a long-term plan, or they can come in and say, I'm working on retirement. So we've got kind of 3 paths for them to come in and say, self-select, and then we sign them up with the content and the coach based on that. The other thing I mentioned was the flourishing index. Maybe that was it.
Right. Yeah, that's what Zane and others are following up with. So I think that covers that question. We also had a question from Regina. Hi, Regina. She asked, do you leverage access to this benefit as part of your talent acquisition strategy? So as part of your talent branding out there externally?
Absolutely. We have a career site, and if you go onto our career site, and we have kind of a restated EVP and employee value proposition, this is part of kind of our proposition around wellness. So we talk about kind of our compensation philosophy, and then we talk about how benefits and wellness is a really important component of that as well. And this is a part of that. So it's very public in how we use this as part of our total offering with people.
Great. Well, yeah. So let's move on here. You came to us and shared with us. I remember during the prep call, I was pretty impressed by some of these financial wellness sort of results metrics. So walk us through some of these.
Absolutely. With the metrics, our measures of success are really threefold. One is, are we getting people to participate? Are they engaged? Are they saving? And then ultimately, are they telling us they're better off from a financial lens? So I'll kind of talk about each one of those areas. We've had already over 43,000 people start something. Doesn't mean they've finished, but we've had, over 40,000 people at least get going on this process. We've had 29,000, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, start saving via payroll deduction into an emergency savings account. And for, a little bit on the how, we use Fidelity as our 401k provider. And when you go into their site, their app that we use for 401k, that also kind of hosts and facilitates this goal booster cash account. We call it a rainy day fund. So it's all there hosted together. You can see all your money in one place, but it's just a bank account that is managed by Fidelity. We do have to go through them in order to do the payroll deduction. So people start up this new account. They do things like, when you go to spend your money or take a withdrawal, are you sure you want to do that? You told us you were saving for a new car. Is this for your new car? So it prompts you to make sure. It doesn't restrict usage, but it does prompt you to make sure, you're using it for what you said you were going to use it for. We've had about 15,000 people complete the program. So we've paid out almost 15 million in this one-time emergency savings seed of $1,000. And we hope, we want that to keep growing. Our goal is through the end of next year to have that grow to over 40 million in terms of what we've invested. We've got 31,000 different sessions attended by Fidelity plus Operation Hope. So just a lot of activity. The money, the incentive is certainly driving the activity. But if you go to the next page, one of the things I'm most excited about is once people start this process of saving and it's there, what we aren't seeing is people just take the money and close down their accounts, because that was the concern, that people were just going to get the money and be done and move on. So what we've measured now is that on average, or the median amount that people are saving on a monthly basis is $100 for the people who are contributing, which is phenomenal. And we found that 82% of people who have created an account and started building an account have not taken any money out. So it appears to us that they're saving that money for a rainy day, just like we want them to. It's not perfect. Of course, some take the money and run, but we are seeing some great behaviors that we think is going to give people some peace of mind and put them in a better position. And, you can see some of the other stats there. So we're certainly seeing some behaviors and some activities that give us a lot of comfort that this is a good step to take.
Yeah, that speaks to your overall communication about the goals, the what's in it for me, stick with it. I think people intuitively, understand the importance of savings. There are those people that would, have immediate needs, something just arose, or, they're just not interested in that goal that you've set up. But I think most people, would get it. And that's being borne out here in your numbers, 82% that are really running with the program as intended.
Yeah. And, that was interesting, because when we first asked Fidelity the question of who's saving it, they said, oh, these are personal accounts. We can't tell you that. And I said, I don't want you to tell us on an individual basis.
Right.
Why don't you tell me in aggregate, like what's happening, right? So they've been able to help us really see inside to what's happening, and so that we can show some metrics. And then the final thing that we've seen is that, so what we do is at the beginning of the program and the end of the program, when somebody starts and finishes, we do an assessment. It's a financial wellness assessment. How are you feeling? How do you feel about your financial situation? How do you feel like, you can manage to a budget and save and manage debt? These are not all the questions that are asked, but some that we like to talk about. So we have found for people who completed at the beginning and the end that it's a 5-point rating. So the number of people who say, I feel confident in my financial situation, has gone up by 66%. The number of people who say, I feel like I have the ability to save for things, has gone up by 100, has more than doubled, 139%. So these assessments help, really dig into the heart of like how we think we're impacting somebody's financial wellness who participated in the program. The final element of what we're trying to measure, which we haven't gotten to yet, but this is something that's on the docket for us, is to say, okay, now that we've done all of this, how can we then measure potentially the performance of somebody who's been in the program versus not? How is our impacting their well-being, helping the performance that they're able to deliver to the organization? That's kind of the ultimate for all of us, is to say, what is the ROI on all this? It's hard to prove ROI on wellness programs. I think you probably all know that. But to the extent we are able to take this to that final level of linking this to a business outcome, our leaders all buy into this investment, but it never hurts to have this to kind of back us up, because, we're going to want to do something after 2024, after this program is over. There's going to be something next. And I think just having this ROI will really help us make the case for what's next and what's to come. So we're out there, we're talking about this program. We actually CNBC is doing an article on it. It should be released today. And so really, happy to answer as we go through here or even offline questions, because we just think this is something that employers have the ability to really influence how people are feeling about their own personal situation, and really, have the ability to impact the country, right? Of being able to drive a need that we see in the U.S. of just not having the financial education and foundation and literacy that our new workers in our workforce need. So anyway, we're really proud of it and really appreciate the opportunity to share too.
Well, and I'm glad you're sharing with us first, maybe before the CNBC piece drops. That'll probably get you a few additional eyeballs beyond what I4CP can bring, but glad you're here with us live. Wanted to make one comment, and then I'd love to see if Carol had led our research on financial wellness over the past year and a half. And so maybe, Carol, you might have some comments or additional questions for Kelley on this, but I just wanted to chime in and note that stat at the bottom, a 70 net promoter score. Net promoter is, for those familiar with that rating, is a sort of difficult thing to get something as high as 70. So I'm very pleased to see that what that means is that people would recommend this program to friends or colleagues, and to see a score as high as 70 is very impressive. So kudos to you on that.
Yeah, Tom, thank you. As you know, we did research specifically into financial well-being last year here at I4CP, and just to frame what a high performance practice the Delta is engaged in here. When we did that research, we found that of I4CP's holistic well-being model, which you might know, consists of physical well-being, mental well-being, career well-being, community, and financial. Financial, when we asked about companies' plans to invest in the coming year, which would be this one, we found that actually financial well-being ranked lowest. So only about 1 in 4 organizations is really actively involved in investing in this and doing the kinds of things that Delta is doing. And in fact, you're also, Kelley, on the cutting edge when it comes to measurement. Just looking at all those metrics you just presented is so impressive. And it's even more impressive because our research found that only 8% of organizations were doing measurement in those areas. So to your point, that's essential for making the business case for it, for getting leadership buy-in, for just assessing and making sure that you're keeping your activities on a track where you're recouping that investment. So very, very important and very impressive, the kinds of things that you're doing. Just before we move on, David had asked in the chat, have you identified what type of workers are participating in the programs that you're doing, Kelley?
Absolutely. We have a dashboard that really digs into participation by by each business unit that we have. So to be completely candid, we are focused the most on our what we call our ground employees. So those would be the folks who, if you go to the airport, they might be checking you in, or they might be helping with the bags, and also our call center employees. That's where we have hired the most. So if I mentioned those 41,000 people earlier, the 41,000 ground employees that we've hired are our main focus area. That is where, we pay a strong wage, but that is our lowest paid population. And so we are targeting heavily our new ground employees to make sure they get the support they need. It doesn't mean we're not educating everybody or communicating to everybody, but we're definitely targeting our focus there. So for each of those groups, we're measuring, what kind of participation have we had, and we've had the most participation in those groups because of the way that we've been targeting. They're the most, and their leaders are fully bought into and supporting us too. And that's a huge thing. It can't just come from HR; it's coming from the business
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense to target that group. That's where the greatest need would be. Vice presidents of corporate, or even your pilots, are more likely to already have established savings accounts and things of that nature. But it's great too what you just noted, that you're targeting the managers and leaders of those field and call center employees, because like you say, it needs to not be seen as an HR thing, so to speak. Had one more question on this, sort of related question from the chat from Brian. A couple of other people also showing interest in this question. That 70 net promoter score, which I believe was for this program. Do you also do an overall net promoter score as Delta as an employer, sort of an engagement NPS? And they're curious about that.
Well, so we don't have an eNPS. We talk a lot about eNPS as it relates to specific programs. So for every one of our programs, I would say we're measuring satisfaction in some way. At a holistic, how are employees feeling about working at Delta? How are they engaged? We have an engagement survey. I don't think those numbers in a vacuum necessarily relate to the NPS, but
right.
We evolve that over time. But the concept of measuring NPS at Delta is familiar to everybody. I mean, we measure our NPS scores as it relates to customers, like in every which way. A huge metric for us. So we then measure how we deliver specific programs, but not specifically kind of overall what is your eNPS as an employee at Delta overall.
Fair enough. You've got another question here from Denise, just in terms of, again, corporate structure. Are some of those field or call center employees unionized, or do you not have any union employees?
Our only contract employees are our pilots and our dispatchers. So all of our other
pilots union
have a direct relationship with us.
Great.
Now, we did offer this program to our union, to our pilots and our dispatchers. It's not part of the contract, so we just kind of made them eligible on top of their regular programs. And they're, they are very different place of the spectrum in terms of pay and needs, but that's why we created these 3 pathways, because we knew what we were going to try to target for our newer ground employees. The content is going to be not relevant or needed for maybe not all. I mean, sometimes even when you're making a good amount of money, you struggle with these things too. So, but people get to select into that. And I think our direct relationship certainly gives us flexibility to do some of these measurements in a unique way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've got about 12-14 minutes left here with you. There was one other topic we had talked about that we wanted to cover, but to set that up, if I could ask Kiara to bring up the poll question that we had designed for today. We were wondering which of the following elements, and you may need to scroll just a bit to see them all. And this is select as many as you want, select maybe up to 3. Which of these elements of your people strategy is your organization focused the most on right now? So go ahead, and if everyone on the call could quick do this poll, I'm curious to see how things will come back. I expect there'll be quite a range of responses here. And if it allows you to select multiple choices, which it should, please select, say, up to 3 out of these options. We'll give everyone another few seconds to respond.
While we're waiting for folks to weigh in here, Tom, just Kelley, to put a point on what you mentioned earlier. We wrote last year about on the topic of financial well-being, and we found research that indicated that of people who actually earn more than $100,000 a year, we found research that indicates more than half of those people are actually living paycheck to paycheck. So I think that eligibility for your unionized employees and some of your higher level earners in the organization might be more spot on than people would initially realize.
Yeah, I think so. And, it's not just about what somebody's paid. It's a lot of other factors that
Right.
Very true.
about in their education growing up. I think also, we found that we didn't necessarily set out with a plan to include them, and that this needed to be a very equitable solution for all. We wanted everybody to have access.
Right. Yeah. Broad-based is always best. So we're sharing the poll results here, and as I suspected, with one exception, a very broad-based responses chosen. Looks like retention and engagement were the top responses at around 50% each, but quickly followed by performance. 44% of you choosing that in your top three. Talent attraction right there as well. So talent acquisition, 38%. Learning and development coming in strong at 36%. Affinity at 24%. Your connection with the sort of shared purpose of the organization. Only motivation, employee motivation, doesn't seem to be the one organizations are too worried about, or at least too focused on now. So Kelley, I'm curious your reactions to this quick poll, and then I know you wanted to tell us a little bit about your focus on affinity in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I think the results aren't surprising from my perspective. Retention, I think attraction maybe would have been the answer maybe a year ago, and now we're all trying to keep everybody we hired, right?
Yeah.
And engage them. So I think it makes sense, and I love to see the 24% on affinity, because I'll talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah, so tell us what does affinity mean at Delta, and why are you focusing on that these days?
Well, I mean, it's a newly developing focus area for us. And it maybe goes back to what Carol asked me at the beginning around our cultural shift that's happened as we have a new workforce. And so what we're really trying to do at the end of the day is say, we want people to be here because they want to be here, and we want them to perform, and we want them to be proud and, connected with the organization. It kind of encapsulates in my mind all the things for what we are trying to get and see from our people. So we've been working on this model to try to articulate what does drive affinity towards the organization. And we've created a bit of a Maslow's hierarchy around this that is in development. This is not something that we've gone public with or gone out to our employees with, but it's just something we're thinking about a next realm of how we think about our strategic focus in HR. And what is our impact? What is our ability to impact these levers too? So it really goes back to our HR strategy. How can we impact it? And what are we trying to drive for the organization? So this concept of affinity is really, you've got table stakes around people do ultimately come to work because they need a job. So we need to start there, right? And then it's about, well, but what is their everyday experience like? What is their experience like with their leader or their peers or the customers? Are they motivated by their job? Are they interested in their job? Are they just here to have a job, right? So it's really about that everyday experience. And then the highest level is really getting to connected purpose. Do you feel good about what you're, delivering? Are you feeling like you're aligned with the purpose of the organization? And so we've just been really debating, how are we doing in all these areas? What are we as HR doing in these areas to help? And where might we be falling short as an organization? And I think that middle layer for us around everyday experiences is potentially our biggest opportunity. And it's not always owned by HR. So that's a hard one too, because it may be, well, as we're striving for a more productive organization, how much stress are we putting on people on an everyday basis to get that flight out on time, right? So it really gets to the heart of the business and how we create those, how people can enable the business and what is their everyday experience like. So in terms of how we're measuring it, we are working with Carol and others at I4CP to think about what does success look like. And we've been thinking about how do we evolve our engagement survey to ask questions maybe in a slightly different way to get the input that we need. So things like, are we living up to our aspired shared identity? Do you identify with that identity? What about your experiences drive connection with the organization? Are your experiences counter to that connection? So just thought we'd share that because it's something that we're working on with I4CP, of getting some input from other HR leaders and other experts in the field.
Well, very interesting. I know we look forward to hearing more, and you'll share that with with Carol and the Total Rewards leaderboard that you're a part of here at I4CP, and it seems like it's resonating with at least some folks on the call. Claudia noted that the topic of meaningful work has been coming up in her eyes at multiple organization conversations where she is across the board, really, and because of its impacts on OD, talent attraction, retention, DE&I, and culture. So it's definitely an interesting thing to be pursuing. And the word affinity in particular is not one that we hear. I mean, it's a part of HR jargon to some extent, but it's not something we hear regularly as much as we have some other terms. So great that you're focusing on that, and look forward to those results, including as you showed earlier with your financial wellness, measures of real success and real impact that you'll be having, I'm sure.
Thank you. I think part of why, sometimes things resonate a little differently at Delta, and this gets to some of your other, what we talked about earlier. We have a lot of leaders senior leaders in our function that are not necessarily, they haven't come up through HR, right? And so their lens tends to be a little different and a little unique, right? And this is really coming from the business. It's coming from, our organization and what these leaders have seen through their other experiences here. So it's nice to be able to create a little bit, but I try to always bring us back to the HR community of saying, okay, but how does that relate to our field and our industry and what we're trying to do?
Right. Well, we've got about 5 minutes left. One other thing we were hoping to talk to you about, a little bit more forward looking. It's always a balance in total rewards between sort of basic compensation elements versus the broader benefit strategy. As you look at 2024, maybe even further ahead, 2025, how are you considering what your plans might be, to the extent you can speak to that?
Well, I mean, we don't have any kind of hard and fast, here's what we're doing next. But I think what could be interesting is just how we're thinking about approaching it, right? So where we are as a business is we are facing now, a lot of demand, but a lot of cost increases. And so we have to be really, really responsible as we go forward to say, we've made a lot of investments in the last couple of years, and now we need to make sure we're balancing both investment with our expectations of it as an employer for performance. And so we haven't gone through the exercise of saying, here's the billions of dollars we invest as a pie in our people. And what do you value the most? What do you value the most? Maybe what do you value the least? And how could we get some input from our broad employee base to say, let's understand some trade-offs. We might have to make some trade-offs. We might have to sunset some programs and refocus elsewhere to make sure what we're delivering has the biggest impact and the biggest value. And that we consider unique, diverse populations as we go here. It may not just be what's best for all, but how can we advance the topic of equity and make sure that what we're driving is aligned with some of our other cultural values when it comes to equity and wellness. So our biggest step ahead of us in the next 6 months, I would say, is to do a value study to understand what people value the most, how they value it, how can it impact them, and where might they be willing to make some trade-offs.
Yeah, I love to hear that you're going to have a listening strategy as part of that. Always important for any HR initiatives, whether it's going to be a major pivot or just sort of an evolution more of what you've already been doing. We've seen growth in listening strategies across the board in HR over the past 3 years in particular. They've become obviously more prevalent with everything everyone's been going through. I think I'll wrap with just one last question. A lot of times all of our wonderful guests we have on Next Practices Weekly, people respond very well to the message and to the leadership that they're bringing. And they're curious to know what is it that you look for people to either join your team or the broader HR team in terms of characteristics, behaviors for HR professionals. So I'm curious just what your thoughts are. What jumps out to you when you're looking to make a hire for someone to join your group?
Well, I appreciate the advance warning of the question, so I thought about it a little bit. And, I've just hired a senior leader on my team to lead all of compensation for Delta. And as I've gone through that process, I've thought about, do I need an SME or do I need somebody who can really come in be the face of engaging around some things, right? And educating the organization. And for me, we have some great SMEs on our team, kind of a few newer in their career, right? That maybe they've been in 5-10 years. We have some strong expertise. For that leader, that total rewards leader role, I was really focused on kind of strategic storytelling. How do we create a product coming out of our part of the organization that we can then roll out to the organization and kind of rinse and repeat and have people recognize and understand and take what sometimes viewed as a black box in comp and make it really clear and strategic. So when I'm looking for leaders on my team, I really focus on that kind of strategic storytelling, being able to get up and engage a group on a complicated topic and make it simple for them. So to me, that's the most important thing, particularly if you have a team of SMEs to support that person. Maybe
Right.
not. So how can you really bring a business person in to lead big initiatives? So.
Wow, I love that. When we've asked this question before, I've often heard storytelling being a growing importance attribute for HR professionals, particularly HR leaders. But I love the addition of the word strategic storytelling. I think that's a great combination of concepts there. So thank you for that. Well, thank you, Kelley, overall, for all that you've contributed today. You've been an outstanding guest. Couldn't be happier. I've been looking forward to this one, and you came through. I'm sure everyone got a lot out of it.
I really appreciate the opportunity to come share. So thank you.
And thank you, Carol, for co-hosting with me today.
Thanks, Tom, and I'll reiterate your thanks, Kelley. It's a great presentation, very informative.
Just a couple of quick reminders as we close. These next Practice Weekly calls are available for recertification credit hours. So those of you on the call that maybe have a certification with HRCI or SHRM, jot down the relevant program ID or activity ID that you see on the screen, because this hour is available as a recert credit hour for you. And lastly, I'll just note, I mentioned earlier, our conference next March, we're also going to have a pretty solid presence at the HR Tech Conference from Human Resource Executive, HRE. That's coming up much sooner, October 10th through the 13th in Las Vegas. Our colleagues Kevin Oakes and Catherine Brecken will be there giving both a pre-conference workshop and a mega session. If you're interested in the HR Tech Conference, you can use the code I4CP and get $300 off your all access pass to the event. So take a look at that if that might be of interest. I'll just close things out. Once again, thank you, Kelley, thank you, Carol, and thank you, Kiara, all three of you, for another excellent event, and look forward to folks joining again next week at the same time. Until then, have a great week, everyone.